So the time-traveling Trumps. So the definition of this conspiracy theory, and this is the existing conspiracy theory that was out there that I kind of stumbled across. But the theory says, this wild internet conspiracy theory finds numerous ways in which Donald Trump and other members of the Trump family are mysteriously connected to time travel technology. This presentation explains these connections while revealing several others that have yet to be discussed. And again, that's me saying I'm going to start off with what was out there and then continue to add to it. To summarize the big picture of this theory, it alleges that Donald Trump was able to see into the future, or at least a possible future. What he saw was an America post-nuclear attack, when our timeline began to resemble the one that led to this nuclear World War III. Donald Trump knew he would have to become president of the United States in order to change the future and avoid nuclear war. So this is what I stumbled across, and at face value, it's just words and whatever. But as we start building upon it, there's some very interesting things. Okay, so here's how tonight's presentation is going to go. So we're going to do part one, we're going to make connections. We're going to make a connection to Tesla. We're going to make a connection to novels predicting the future. We're going to make a connection to presidential prophecies. Then we'll take intermission, and we'll come back. Then we'll make a connection to the Sonora Air Club, and that's going to be the bridge, kind of going back to the first presentation, and I'll kind of try to summarize last month's presentation into a quick minute or so, but we'll connect to that. We'll make a connection to John Titor. I'll do my best to see here, but show hands. Has anybody ever heard John Titor before? Oh, we got one. Any John Titor? Okay, good. So for most of you, this will be a new information. All right. We'll make a connection to Freemasons. And then we'll conclude with this idea of following the White Rabbit. Everybody in here familiar with Alice in Wonderland? Going down the rabbit hole, following the White Rabbit. Alice follows the White Rabbit down the rabbit hole, and lots of crazy things and a whole new world and lots of just complete insanity down there, right? We're going to take this idea and see where it takes us tonight. And that's how we'll conclude, and we'll bridge the gap to next month. So let's get started. Part one, connection to Tesla. So, Nikola Tesla, Nikola, both write my book. Born in 1856, he was born in the Austrian Empire, which is modern-day Croatia. Came to the United States in 1884, became a U.S. citizen a few years later. He worked for Thomas Edison, Westinghouse, J.P. Morgan. He was an inventor. He was an electrical engineer, a mechanical engineer, a physicist, a futurist. What is a futurist? A futurist is a person who explores predictions and possibilities about the future and how they can emerge from the present. This is our background on Tesla. Just some of his achievements. We want to show that he was a very intelligent, brilliant person. He discovered and invented alternating current. He discovered and perfected AC, alternating current electricity, which proved to be superior to Thomas Edison's DC or direct current. He created power systems that allowed distribution of electricity over many miles. Our use of electricity today is all dependent on the things that Tesla discovered. Wireless lighting, early X-ray experimentations, radio remote control. Earlier today, I have a little pond in front of my house, and I was driving a little radio-controlled boat. First person to do that was Nikola Tesla. So when you see radio remote control, had a little boat, put it in the water, had a remote control, and drove it around with radio frequency. He discovered that. Mechanical oscillators and generators and electrical discharge tubes. And a lot more. A lot more. Some of the things he pursued: worldwide wireless electrical power distribution. What is that? Think free energy. And over there on the right is a picture. I forget which island specifically, but one of the islands off New York. He bought some property, and this was his big life goal, and financial reasons never finished it. J.P. Morgan pulled funding. Certain things happened, but I never quite finished it. But this was what he was working towards, this tower to provide worldwide wireless electrical power distribution, free energy. That's what he was working on. And of course, wireless communication. We send text messages all the time. In early 1900s, Nikola Tesla was getting financing from J.P. Morgan saying, yeah, I can send messages wirelessly all over the world. But he also got into time travel. So this is where things begin a little bit. So in 1895, Tesla suggested that time and space could be influenced by magnetic fields. This led to a number of experiments by Tesla. In 1895, this is a true story, in 1895, a witness found Tesla at a small coffee shop looking shaken and disturbed. His assistant was with him and claimed that Tesla was almost electrocuted by a machine while Tesla was trying to solve the, quote, time travel riddle. Tesla, who liked to experiment on himself, performed an experiment, that's an experiment, it's just a typo, an experiment where he inserted himself into an electrical magnetic field. Tesla claimed he found himself in an entirely different time and space window where he could see the past, present, and future at the same time while staying within this artificially created magnetic field. So we have evidence that he was experimenting with time travel and one day had an incident where he claimed, and by his own words, he could see the past, present, and future all at once. And this is, before even 1900. And he lived many years afterwards and obviously continued pursuing research on this subject. Gets a little crazier from here. Just before his death in 1943, Tesla claimed he had perfected his death beam, or death ray. It is natural to think that the United States government agencies would be interested in any scientific ideas involving weaponry. And for those that were here the last presentation, we talked about the NIMSA group, and they sent an agent over, and we had the people in the Sonora Air Club in California making flying devices, and they wanted to weaponize them for war. So we could imagine that government agencies in the United States would be interested in things that Tesla was working on as well, no difference there, that maybe had ability to be used for weapons of war. Some agencies were also concerned that some of his science would fall into the hands of Nazis or Soviets, and this was a fact as well. So the morning after Tesla's death, his nephew arrived at his apartment to find that someone had already come in and gone through his uncle's belongings. And specifically what he noted is when he came in the morning after his death, that technical papers were missing, and specifically a black notebook the nephew was aware of that was several hundred pages long, and he recalls seeing many pages in this book marked government. 2 days, so the following day after Tesla's death, the United States, again, true story, the United States Office of Alien Property arrived and seized all of Tesla's remaining work and belongings. This included 2 truckloads of papers and artifacts, in addition to the almost 30 barrels and bundles that had already been seized from storage. The entire collection was sealed under the authority of the Office of Alien Property. Now, this isn't aliens from outer space, basically saying that there was a department at the time called the Office of Alien Property, where the United States government could seize the belongings of non-citizens here in the United States that were deemed to maybe be a threat or an enemy to the United States, which was odd, because as we pointed out, Tesla was a United States citizen. So let's talk about what was recovered. So the Office of Alien Property comes in. The government wanted to know exactly what it now possessed, so they had all these things from Tesla, including these research papers. They wanted to know, what do we have here? Did Tesla's work hold the keys to any scientific breakthroughs or potentially new weapons of war and defense? The mathematics, as they're looking at these papers, the mathematics were so advanced, the government needed to call in a specialist to review the information. The individual that was called upon was a professor at MIT. He was an electrical engineer already working with the National Defense Research Committee of the Office of Scientific Research and Development, who is currently working on for the government radar systems. This person developed rotational radiation therapy, and he also developed one of the first million-volt X-ray generators. So this was a brilliant person, making major contributions to science and medicine. This person would later receive the President's Certificate of Merit by President Truman in 1948 and President Reagan's National Medal of Science in 1983. This is a brilliant person, a very established person, somebody that achieved many things and was rewarded and recognized by multiple presidents. And there were other awards that I didn't even put on the screen. Who was this individual? John G. Trump. This is the uncle of Donald Trump, the future current 45th President of the United States. So the individual that gets called in to go through all of Tesla's work is none other than Donald Trump's uncle, his father's brother. After he looks at all the paperwork, he spends weeks looking at the paperwork and then writes up a conclusion and gives it to the government. This is what he said. His, meaning Tesla, his thoughts and efforts during at least the past 15 years were primarily of a speculative, philosophical, and somewhat promotional character, often concerned with the production and wireless transmission of power, but did not include new, sound, workable principles or methods for realizing such results. So this is where the conspiracy begins to take hold. Really? You study the secrets of the most brilliant person on the planet, and there's nothing useful. Nothing. And those of you that were here for last month's presentation, this reminds me a lot of the Avrodisc smokescreen, where we uncover information, but we're going to portray that what we have is really nothing, and there's nothing to see here. So again, this is where the conspiracy theory begins to kick in. And some questions that are asked. Did John G. Trump uncover Tesla's secret theories, research, and work on time travel and manipulation? Is it possible that the father, Fred, of Donald Trump, and Donald's vast fortunes would fund secret and private work on Tesla's science? So, this is something that I wanted to insert. Has Donald ever shown us any fascination with Tesla? If there's a connection between Donald Trump and Nikola Tesla, is there any evidence? Can we point to anything? Nikola Tesla, when you're brilliant, sometimes you're a little bit crazy, right? We know Einstein was brilliant, but we always hear the stories, he couldn't, do simple math. 2 + 2, too much for him, but he could do the theory of relativity. So, just want to bring up something here with Nikola Tesla, and this is true. He fell in love with a pigeon. Later in life, as he got older, he lived in an apartment, and really his best friend was a pigeon that would visit him every day, fly to his window. He would feed the pigeon and spend quality time with the pigeon. And he's quoted as saying, "I loved that pigeon as a man loves a woman, and she loved me. As long as I had her, there was a purpose to my life." And then later, eventually the pigeon would die, and Nikola would say that at that point, he knew that his own life, he had lost meaning to life. So he was very attached to this pigeon. I just find this interesting. Okay? So we have another picture here. This is Donald Trump. This is at his Mar-a-Lago down in Florida. But what's interesting to note is what's in the background. There's all these tiles behind him. Okay? But what we want to do, let's take a closer look at these tiles. So these are the tiles. And if you look, what this says is Plus Ultra. Okay? So what is Plus Ultra? Plus Ultra was founded by the greatest minds of our time. Nikola Tesla, Thomas Edison, Gustav Eiffel, H.G. Wells, during a legendary meeting at the top of the Eiffel Tower during the 1889 World's Fair in Paris, France. It's basically a secret society of the world's most brilliant men. Their motto, I can't pronounce it, but it translates to tomorrow is ours. Tomorrow is ours. Their goal, they wanted to preserve the technology of tomorrow and possibly keep some advanced technology hidden so it could never be used for war. It was rumored that the work that they were working on continued in a secret location. Oh, let me go back here. So, is there any credibility to Plus Ultra? Is there anything to it? Has the media ever given us a clue that there's something to grasp onto? And this picks up again from the last presentation last month. Those of you that were here, I showed examples of how sometimes Hollywood likes to tease us with things that seem just fantastic stories to us, but have a little bit of truth behind them. So if we could have Tyler, you're going to go into the, there you go, and you're going to bring up the Tomorrowland clip. Oh, not that one. It's okay. So full screen, all the way at the top. All right, there we go.
Every second that ticks by, the future is running out. Nope.
It's not mine.
What's not yours?
The pen. I've never.
What if there's a place,
Dad, I just need you to look at this. Does it look weird?
a secret place, where nothing was impossible?
You're not seeing this?
Stop it!
Go away! Did you see the dog?
I want you to take me there.
Take you where?
Where'd you get this? Who are you, kid? What you saw was a place where the best and the brightest people in the world came together to actually change it. We've been looking for someone like you for a very long time.
Why? Did something happen over there? Something bad?
They followed you here?
Who?
Come on! Get in!
How is this a good idea?
There's one way in. They know we're coming, so follow me.
All the people, why me?
He thinks you can fix the future.
Notice they're getting into a spaceship, or a ship here, and notice where it comes out of. It's coming out of the Eiffel Tower.
You wanted to see Tomorrowland. Here it comes.
Everybody, is audio okay? Everybody back can hear that? Okay. So the Disney, I think, what was that, 2 years ago maybe, came out with a movie called Tomorrowland. Tomorrowland is the story of Plus Ultra. Even in the movie there, you can hear George Clooney saying there's a place where the most brilliant people came together to protect the secrets of the future. Little disclosure. So we move on to part 2, and this is where the time-traveling Trump conspiracy just continues. There's more connections here. It just continues to get really weird. So, maybe you've heard of it, maybe you haven't, maybe this is new to you, but there is a book called Barron Trump's Marvelous Underground Journey. This book's existence is real. It was confirmed. It exists at the Library of Congress, written by Ingersoll Lockwood in 1893. 1893, Barron Trump. Barron Trump's Marvelous Underground Journey. And just to show you, there is the cover of it. That is the cover of Barron Trump's Marvelous Underground Journey. I hope you all know who Barron Trump is, but just in case. So there's some similarities here. The main character in the book, his name is Barron Trump. Well, today we have a Barron Trump. That's the son of Donald Trump. In the book, Barron is a wealthy, aristocratic boy who grows up in Castle Trump. Well, today we have Barron, who grows up as a wealthy boy, the son of Donald Trump, and he grows up in Trump Tower. Trump Tower is Castle Trump. Barron, in the book, is described as a quiet boy with an inquisitive look. And maybe some of you don't really know too much about Barron Trump of our time, but that is exactly what we see with the Barron Trump that we know. We don't really hear him talk. He's always just a quiet boy with a very inquisitive look. And one of the most, inquisitive look that we've seen was on the election night when, at the end, when President Trump's announced a winner, and he comes out on stage, and his son Barron standing there, and everybody in the news the next day is like, look at Barron Trump. And they described him as autistic because he was so quiet and just looking around and staring at different things. It's a lot like the character in the book. Here's where it gets even more crazy. In the book, Barron, he's guided by the Dawn. There's a character called the Dawn, Master of Masters. Well, the Dawn is Donald's nickname. Donald Trump's nickname has always been the Dawn. And Master of Masters, well, President of the United States. The Dawn gives him, Barron in the book, the Dawn gives Barron a manuscript with a map and directions that leads him to a portal that he can travel through to another dimension or time. And of course, in our terminology, portal would be a wormhole through time. Very interesting. Doesn't end there. But real quick, there's Barron Trump, our Barron Trump on the right, and in the book, there's the Barron Trump on the left. About the same age, look a little bit similar. He is wearing a hat, but you can see the hair parted coming underneath the hat. They even have similar haircut and hairstyle. Very interesting. The same author followed it up with another book, The Last President. The book's existence, again, confirmed by the Library of Congress. Same author. Again, here's the cover. It's called The Last President. More similarities. The story begins with a scene from a panicked New York City in early November, election month, describing a state of uproar after the election of an enormously opposed outsider candidate. This is the 1890s. We just got done talking about Barron Trump. The same author is talking about a future election in New York City where there's a state of uproar because a political outsider just became president. Okay. Here's some quotes from the book. The entire East Side is in a state of uproar. Police officers shouted through streets, warning city folk to stay indoors for the night. Mobs of vast size are organizing under the lead of anarchists and socialists. The Fifth Avenue Hotel will be the first to feel the fury of the mob, the novel continues. The Fifth Avenue Hotel. I hope some of you realize that on Fifth Avenue, the Fifth Avenue Hotel, that's where Trump Tower is. Trump Tower is a hotel. It's the Fifth Avenue Hotel. And also in the book, the president appoints Mr. Pence to his cabinet. Well, our Donald Trump appointed Mike Pence to be his vice president. Any similarities? Well, maybe some of you forgot, but let's go back to election night, November 2016. Here's just some articles from that time. Cops clash with protesters on third night of Trump riots. Over on the right, protecting the president-elect inside his own tower. This is all in New York City on Fifth Avenue, in front of the hotel. Lady Gaga protests Donald Trump's win outside Trump Tower. Anti-Donald Trump protests erupt across the United States as cities declare billionaire, not my president. And the view from Trump Tower, and we see in the picture down here, the protests and the riots going on below. How does this happen in 1890? A little more strange things that I uncovered as I kept going through this. So when we talk about time travel, it's not just about traveling through time. I mean, I'm looking at it from the perspective of predictions, prophecies, things that are said and then happen later. So we continue down this path. The number 7 is interesting. The number 7 is one of the most significant numbers of the Bible because it is the number of spiritual perfection. It is the number which is stamped on every work of God. This is what the number 7 is supposed to be. But you triple that, 777. You take this significant number 7 and you triple that. 777 brings a message from your angels to let you know you are on the right path. And you're living and serving your divine purpose. The universe is happy with your progress, and due to your positive efforts and hard work, you have earned your rewards. It's quite interesting that Donald Trump was born on June 14th, 1946, places his hand on the Bible, January 20, 2017, becoming the President of the United States. 70 years, 7 months, and 7 days from the time he was born to the time he becomes President of the United States. Another very interesting coincidence, right? Lots of coincidences. At what point, are they just all coincidences? Kim Clement. This is a prophet. He unfortunately died before the election. He never got to see his prophecies come true, but he died in 2016. But this is a religious prophet. And you can watch his videos on YouTube. Very interesting guy. But anyways, let's go back to February 10th, 2007. Who's talking about Donald Trump as president in 2007? Nobody really. I mean, we're gearing up 2007. We're talking about a completely different election. We're not talking about Donald Trump. This is Kim Clement's words. God says, the one that is chosen shall go in, and they shall say, he has hot blood. For the Spirit of God says, yes, he may have hot blood, but he will bring the walls of protection on this country in a greater way. And the economy of this country shall change rapidly. I will put at your helm for 2 terms a president who will pray, but he will not be a praying president when he starts. I mean, I guess he was right that Donald Trump would become president of the United States, as we'll see here. Now, he says 2 terms. We'll see if his prophecy continues to come true with 2 terms. But a man with hot blood, that sounds like a guy who's known for being pretty bold when he speaks and very to the point about what he says. Walls of protection, that sounds familiar. A changing economy, interesting. 2 months later, in California, Kim Clement. This that shall take place shall be the most unusual thing, a transfiguration, a going into the marketplace, if you wish, into the news media, where Time magazine will have no choice but to say what I want them to say. Newsweek, what I want them to say. I meaning, according to Kim Clement, I not meaning Kim Clement, I meaning God. The View, what I want them to say. Trump shall become a trumpet, says the Lord. Trump shall become a trumpet. I shall raise up the Trump to become a trumpet, for God said, I will not forget 9/11. I will not forget what took place that day, and I will not forget the gatekeeper that watched over New York, who will once again stand and watch over this nation. It's interesting that he becomes the President of the United States, and according to this, Time and Newsweek had to admit and say what Kim Clement just said. So at this point, we're going to slow down a little bit. We're going to take a little bit of an intermission, let everybody grab a drink, something to eat, and we'll come back and we'll keep going a little bit deeper and a little bit crazier with this conspiracy theory. Okay? Now, the reason we're tying this in, what is the Sonora Aero Club? So those of you that were here last month, this was a big part of our presentation. And I'm going to try to sum this up quickly. The Sonora Aero Club in the 1850s was a secret society that were working on anti-gravity aircrafts. And we discover this, we know about this, we learn about this in present time because of a series of paintings that were discovered by a German immigrant who came over, goes to California, stays with the Sonora Aero Club, and it does paintings of the anti-gravity aircrafts that they're working on. Now, at our last presentation, we concluded, so I start off the last presentation, again, the UFO topic. We start talking about the Sonora Aero Club to give some historical reference. We talk about these paintings, but then we introduce these paintings at the very end to be the segue to tonight's presentation. If you look closely, those of you that were not here last time, the painting on the top left, so one of these paintings in 1850s by Charles Delshall of the anti-gravity crafts being built. At the top, you'll see the word Trump. Okay? Painting on the right, bottom left, Arrow. That's what they called their flying devices, the Arrow. So that is the Arrow Trump. And in case if it's not hot-blooded enough, big and bold, red, white, and blue, we have this painting here with an arrow with the word Trump across the red, white, and blue. So very interesting. So that was our segue. Can we make a connection to this? Of course we can. Because there's so many connections. Of course we can make a connection. So, Donald Trump, his grandfather, Friedrich Trump. I love this story because there's so many things to this official story that I just don't buy. But we're going to talk about the official story, the facts that are true. But there's an element that I just think that doesn't make quite sense, and we'll talk about. But this is the story of Friedrich Trump. In 1885, at the age of 16, Friedrich Trump secretly leaves home. So basically the story is one night, for pretty much no reason, like Friedrich Trump is a 16-year-old kid, and he's just at home in his parents' house, and one night he's just like, heck with it, I'm going to the United States. Crawls out his bedroom window, hops on a steamship, and comes to the United States because there was nothing going on in his hometown. There was no future, there was no real economy there, and things like that. So that's the story. And that's all believable, and I'll buy that. But he just, for no reason, crawls out his bedroom window, gets on a steamship, comes to the United States. Okay. He arrives in New York City. So he comes to New York City and he sets himself up as a barber. So he shows up in New York City, has no money, nothing. He's just an immigrant that basically came to the United States, and he sets up his trade. He was back in where he came from. He was a barber, so he goes to New York and he just starts cutting hair. Sometime between 1885 and 1891, by doing nothing but being a barber, he somehow comes into so much money, and he's already building wealth in these 6 years as a barber. He builds up enough wealth that he says, I'm going to go to where the action is. I'm going to go to the West Coast, and I'm going to set up a saloon to service the influx of men going out west to be gold miners. So at this time, there's a bunch of men going out west to the West Coast to mine for gold, and he says, I'm going to go out there and set up a saloon and make even more money. But somehow in these 6 years as a barber, he has enough money to travel out west and enough money to already set up a saloon. I just find that fascinating, but maybe it is what it is. This is also, this time period, this is just after the Sonora Aero Club period, and just a few years before the West Coast airship mysteries would begin. Charles Delchaux, the guy that made the paintings, Charles Delchaux is still finishing his paintings and would be around the 4,500 range during the period that Friedrich is out west. This is the 4,500 range, which is also an interesting number when he's painting the paintings of the Trump arrows. Is it possible? Does Frederick Trump encounter former members of the Sonora Aero Club on the West Coast while he's out there? Also, the leader of the Sonora Aero Club, began out west as mining for gold. Does Friedrich Trump encounter Delchaux maybe? Does he possibly procure one of the arrows of the Sonora Aero Club? Now, the story of Friedrich Trump, the grandfather of Donald Trump, he would eventually go from the West Coast. He would go back home to his hometown, well, it was later Germany, to his German hometown. He would marry Elizabeth Christ in 1902. So he basically goes home to get married, and then he wants to he wants to stay there and return to New York. I think I skip it here, but real quick just to insert. There's a weird part of the Friedrich Trump history. He goes home to Germany to get married. So his goal was to come to the United States, build up wealth, go back to Germany, and they wouldn't let him stay. They actually said, oh, you've been gone for 8 years or however many years. You've been gone too long. You're no longer a citizen. We no longer want you. You need to leave. He was basically kicked out of Germany. And it's a big thing, and it doesn't make a lot of sense, but he was kicked out. So he was actually deported back to the United States. But anyways, moving along, he returns to New York City, a very wealthy man. So at this point, goes from barber, sets up this saloon. When he comes back to the United States, just after this saloon out west, he's a very, very wealthy man. This is the beginning of the Trump wealth. Now, because of his wealth and living in New York City, he would be enjoying the same social places at the time of Nikola Tesla. Now, the one thing when I watch documentaries of Tesla is as, I don't want to say eccentric, but as odd as, this is a man who fell in love with a pigeon. He, to an extent, was still somewhat very sociable. Part of him knew, he wasn't great at it, but part of him knew that he was dependent upon financiers to finance his experiments. So he was good enough, he could still go to the social restaurants and hangouts of these types of peoples. And a lot of time he was their guest of honor and things like that. But anyway, so Nikola Tesla was out and about, and he would be out socializing and things like that as a wealthy man at these particular places that wealthy people hang out. And now we have Friedrich Trump at the exact same time in New York City as a wealthy man hanging out at these places. Do the two of them ever encounter one another? Is it possible that Trump shares information about the Sonora Aero Club to Tesla, or even the arrows? So we can make that connection. Now, I asked at the beginning here if anybody knew of John Titor. Not too many hands, so this should be fun. So we're moving around a little bit. Unlike the last presentation when I did the UFOs, I tried to do a very linear, chronological thing. Tonight, we're hopping around. We're just showing all these different connections. You choose to like the ones you like. You choose to like or dislike the ones you don't like. But there's a lot of interesting connections here. So this is all real. This happened at least, okay? November 2nd, 2000, a person calling themselves Time Travel _0, then later John Titor, started posting on a public forum and claiming to be a time traveler from the year 2036. where the United States was now several divided territories after a nuclear World War III, in which the United States was attacked by nuclear missiles. So John Titor is described, he says, I'm from the year 2036, and in my year, my timeline, I live in an era where the United States has been attacked by nuclear missiles, there was World War III, and now the United States falls, and it's several territories. One of the first things he did, this individual, this time travel _0, John Titor, one of the first things he did was post pictures of his time machine and its operations manual. As the weeks went by, more and more people began questioning him about why he was here, the physics of time travel, and his thoughts about our time. He also posted on other forums, including the now non-existent Art Bell site, and some of you might know the name Art Bell from Coast to Coast Across America, the radio show in the middle of the night. On March 21st, 2001, John Titor told us he would be leaving our timeline and returning to the year 2036. He was never heard from ever again. This is one of the pictures that John Titor provided on the internet of some schematics of his time-traveling device. That he, sort of like Back to the Future, he would put it in a car and it would create a space time travel magnetic field. He had a whole description of it over my head, and I'm not even going to bother trying to, but this was a schematic of it. And here's actual pictures that John Titor provided. This is 2001. It's well into the beginning of the internet. Don't forget how early, rudimentary the internet was in 2001. But there was these, chat rooms. We're going to talk about some predictions. As I said, time travel, it's predictions, it's prophecies, it's saying things that come true. It's this mystery of how do people know things are going to happen. That's what interests me. But John Titor would tell us things. But the first thing we got to talk about, and this was one of the big things. This is the thing that nobody can ignore, but let's talk about this, okay? He talked about a computer called the IBM 5100. So, John Titor says that his mission, he was given a mission to come back to the year 1975. So I think the story is he goes to the year 1975, or maybe comes to 2001, then goes to 75, then goes home, or 75 first, it doesn't matter. He stopped in 2001 at some point for a reason, but his mission was to go to the year 1975. I can get into that, but it doesn't matter. Why? Now, similarly, as we recall, let's go back. Remember in the year 99 and 2000, we had the Y2K issues. So similarly, how we thought Y2K, the computers would shut down banks, utilities, airports, etc. Well, according to John Titor, apparently the remaining facilities and infrastructure in the year 2036 faced a looming Unix timeout error that would come in the year 2038. So he's in the year 2036, and there's, just like Y2K and all the computers in that time, there's a Unix code that was going to expire in the year 2038. And if that happened, they would lose remaining infrastructures, utilities, and etc. Okay? So he says his mission was to retrieve specifically an IBM 5100 from the year 1975. And this is important because of its ability to be a universal computer language translator. And I'm going to pause here for a second. So what he said is he had to get this computer because in the year 2036, they have all this different computer code, computer languages, and everything. And you're talking about infrastructure falling apart, a post-World War III era. And they have to, in order for these computers to not run out in the year 2038 and lose the remaining infrastructure that they have, they basically have to reprogram all these computers. But in order to do that, they would need something that could act as a universal computer language interface. There was no such thing. But apparently there was. The IBM 5100. And in reality, in our timeline, this feature was hidden from the public and only known to a handful of the original engineers of the IBM 5100. After Titor's statements, again, this is 2000, 2001, but after John Titor went online and talked about needing this computer for that feature, eventually it was revealed that this function did exist. A gentleman named Bob Dubke, one of the original IBM 5100 engineers, said the function was there and it was hidden because of worries about how IBM's competition might use it. Here's a picture of the IBM 5100 portable computer. So again, just saying, when John Titor says this online, nobody knew this. In fact, everybody thought it was ridiculous. Why would you need this computer from 1975, blah, 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 blah. And it turns out that in reality, the truth is this computer actually was created, and the way it was developed, it was a universal computer. It could be used as a universal computer language interface. But they hid it. No one ever knew except a handful of the original engineers. Maybe he was one of them. But he gave some predictions that are interesting, so let's talk about these. So in February 5th, 2001, he types on the internet one day, "Are you really surprised to find out that Iraq has nukes now? Or is it just BS to whip up everyone into accepting the next war?" This comment was before 9/11, before the Iraq War, and before the United States goes into war with Iraq on misled information about weapons of mass destruction. How could he possibly know that was coming? He also says one day on the internet, "Care to share with me how you solved the overheating problem on your space plane?" Let's not forget that the Space Shuttle Columbia disintegrated on February 1st, 2003 during re-entry due to overheating issues. Right from Wikipedia. When Columbia re-entered the atmosphere of Earth, the damage allowed hot atmospheric gases to penetrate the heat shield and destroy the internal wing structure, which caused the spacecraft to become unstable and break apart. And there's a picture to just remind us all. He also says, Titor said that Stephen Hawking's writing about black holes were wrong and that he would eventually admit this as his biggest mistake. Here's an article from 2013. Stephen Hawking admits the biggest blunder of his scientific career, early belief that everything swallowed up by a black hole must be lost forever. Interesting. He also talked about individual content creation. This is in the year 2000. In the year 2000, long before YouTube, long before social media outlets were being thought of, John Titor described the future where the people would be individual content creators, posting news, videos, pictures, etc. online. So why are we talking about John Titor? What is the connection here? There's a few. Let's talk about it. Number one, the time-traveling Trump conspiracy theory theorizes that Trump saw the United States post a World War III nuclear war. Is this the same future that John Titor is talking about? Did this cause Donald Trump to be afraid and publicly vocal about avoiding nuclear war long before entering politics? Well, do we have any documented quotes by Donald Trump saying that he fears a future nuclear war? In 1984, Trump tells the New York Times he's worried that some wacko in Syria can end the world with nuclear weapons. I hope you guys watched the news. I think last month, 2018, we found out that Iran was not upholding their end of the agreement with the Iran deal, that they were hiding nuclear facilities in Syria. At least that's what we're told, but that was just on the news. The same article, Time, says the nuclear threat, Donald Trump, it has been troubling him, Trump, since his uncle, a nuclear physicist, began talking to him about it 15 years ago. That same article, Trump told the Times that the nuclear threat worried him so much that he hoped one day to have the chance to use his deal-making skills to negotiate a nuclear arms agreement. Well, we all just witnessed the nuclear arms summit this month. It's still June. This just recently happened. 2016, Trump tells Anderson Cooper, "I hate nuclear more than any. My uncle was a professor and he used to tell me about the problem." Same interview with Anderson Cooper. "When I hear Obama get up and say the biggest threat to the world today is global warming, I say, is this guy kidding? The only global warming I'm worried about is nuclear global warming because that's the single biggest threat." So let's just reminisce for a minute. If Tyler, if you could pull up this video clip for us.
You say that you, as president, would be willing to launch a preemptive strike against North Korea's nuclear capability.
First, I'd negotiate. I would negotiate like crazy, and I'd make sure that we tried to get the best deal possible. Look, Tim, if a man walks up to you in the street in Washington, because this doesn't happen, of course, in New York, but if a man walks up and puts a gun to your head and says, "Give me your money," wouldn't you rather know where he's coming from before he had the gun in his hand? And these people, in 3 or 4 years, are going to be having nuclear weapons. They're going to have those weapons pointed all over the world, and specifically at the United States. And wouldn't you be better off solving this really potentially unbelievable, and the biggest problem, I mean, we can talk about the economy, we can talk about Social Security. The biggest problem this world has is nuclear proliferation. And we have a country out there in North Korea, which is sort of wacko, which is not a bunch of dummies, and they are going out and they are developing nuclear weapons. And they're not doing it because they're having fun doing it, they're doing it for a reason. And wouldn't it be good to sit down and really negotiate something, and ideally negotiate? Now, if that negotiation doesn't work, you better solve the problem now than solve it later. And you know it, and every politician knows it, and nobody wants to talk about it. Jimmy Carter, who I really like, and he went over there, it was so soft. These people are laughing at us.
The former general of the Air Force, Merrill McPeak, the former Secretary of Defense Les Aspin said you could not launch a preemptive strike against North Korea because the nuclear fallout could be devastating to the Asian Peninsula.
I'm not talking about us using nuclear weapons. I'm saying that they have areas where they're developing missiles.
So taking out their
Do you know that this
potential
country
to create a fallout.
Do you know that this country went out and gave them nuclear reactors, free fuel for 10 years? We virtually tried to bribe them into stopping, and they're continuing to do what they're doing, and they're laughing at us. They think we're a bunch of dummies. I'm saying that we have to do something to stop.
But if the military told you, Mr. Trump, we can't do
You're
this.
giving me two names. You're giving me two names. I don't know. You want to do it in 5 years when they have warheads all over the place, every one of them pointing to New York City, to Washington, and every one of them. Is that when you want to do it, or do you want to do something now? You better do it now.
All right, we'll go back to the presentation. I don't care, for Trump, against Trump, indifferent. We're not talking about that tonight. We're talking about these crazy connections, past and present and future. Oh, that's up to me here to change. Is it possible? Now, let's get a little bit crazy, guys. Again, why are we talking about John Titor? I mentioned a couple reasons, but is it possible that Donald Trump was John Titor? Even in the simplest sense that he pretended to be a time traveler and go online and warn us about nuclear war? Do we have any evidence that Donald Trump has ever pretended to be someone named John? I mean, that would be the connection we need. Can we say that we have examples of Donald Trump pretending to be someone named John? We just made examples. Clearly, we can connect Donald Trump has this fear of nuclear war. John Titor warns us about nuclear war. I don't know, is Donald Trump John Titor? Depends. We would have to make a connection, I would think, to even consider that he has pretended to be someone named John. Keep forgetting here. Oh, well, what do you know? We have a clip. Yeah, Donald John. This one's fun. If you don't like
the truth is important here.
Can we turn it
up?
up?
One of the reasons that we are bringing you a story that is a reminder of something that you've heard before. Okay, there's a Washington Post story today which talks about a former Forbes reporter who says Donald Trump lied to him about his wealth to get onto the Forbes 400 list. So what? Keep listening. He did it by posing as someone who was supposedly the VP of finance for his company, but it was him. And the reporter has it on audio tape. Donald Trump pretending to be someone named John Barron. The audio
John
from
Barron.
1984. The journalist is Jonathan Greenberg, and he says, I got duped by this guy, John Barron. Take a listen.
Most of the assets have been consolidated to Mr. Trump, because you have down Fred Trump. And I'd like to talk to you off the record if I can, just to make it really easier. Okay, sure. Yeah, that's fine. All right, but I think you can really use Donald Trump now, and you can just consolidate. I think last year somebody showed me the article, and I think you had 200 and 200. And really, it's been pretty well consolidated now for the most part. As I also think somebody had mentioned that you had asked about that, or somebody had, and it's been pretty well consolidated, okay?
And I had a wild story about
That's
Donald Trump
one.
in a 1991 interview about his love life. The 25-year-old story is making headlines as the Washington Post goes digging through Trump's past and what it promises will be a series of reports uncovering every detail about his life. In moments, Howie Kurtz will join us on that. But first, John Roberts has the details. John?
Well, maybe back in 1991, People magazine writer Sue Carswell was looking for the scoop on Donald Trump leaving then-girlfriend Marla Maples for model Carla Bruni. When Carswell called Trump's headquarters, she was told that Trump wasn't available. A short time later, she received a call from a fellow who identified himself as John Miller, but sounded an awful lot like Donald Trump.
Well, it's just that he really decided that he wasn't, he didn't want
The voice is 25 years younger than today, but the New York accent, cadence of speech, and inflection on certain words does sound an awful lot like Trump.
All right, we'll go back to the presentation. I don't know how well that sounded through the in-house system. When you listen to that, I mean, there's really no, you can't really argue that. It's clearly Donald Trump. He's pretending to be John Barron, and he's John Miller there in the second clip. How about another connection? Freemasons. So before we play these clips, again, when I said at the beginning, I wanted to start this off. Initially, I was going to look into The Simpsons and how just randomly the things that are in The Simpsons are constantly happening in real life. It's insane, it's crazy, and it gets to the point where it's just like coincidence. Okay, what's going on here? So we're gonna start with that. We're going to show that to give you guys some evidence that might not be familiar with that, and then we'll watch Tyler right after the first clip go right into the second, because we got to learn a little bit more about the behind the scenes, the background of the guy that creates The Simpsons.
If something happens one time, anomaly. Happens 2 times, it's like, oh, okay, maybe. But whenever there's a trend of 18 plus, 20 plus things being predicted, you got to go like, hey, Ronan, the gig's up. We know. You're a time traveler. Just tell us. Bro, I just want to talk to you. I got so many questions. Siegfried and Roy tiger attack. Do you remember that? Of course. Do you remember back in the day how tight Siegfried and Roy were with their tigers? It was like every main story was like, oh, these tigers are the best behaved animals on earth, blah, blah, blah. Simpsons in 1993 said the tiger is going to turn. This little friendly tiger is going to become an enemy of Siegfried and Roy quickly, and it's going to happen. 2003 it actually happened. Autocorrect errors, 1994. Before you could even play Snake on the gray little box phone, they predicted that autocorrect would happen on your phone. Are you kidding me? Didn't happen until 2007. FaceTime, 1995. Not even a thought. I don't even know if anybody knew what the internet was. With the A and then the ring around it?
At.
See, that's what I said.
Now, what is internet anyway?
In 1995, they said, don't worry, you'll be carrying around a device where you will be face-to-face with somebody on the opposite side of Earth. 1995, they said that. 2010, it happened. Faulty voter machines. 2008, they predicted it. 2012, it became the forefront of conversation in a big, big way. I assume these voter machines have been up in question for a long, long time, but they just knew that it was going to come to fruition in 2012.
I want to vote for Obama. 2 votes for McCain. Well, it's time for a change. 3 votes for McCain.
The God particle. Now, this is the big one. Ty Schmidt did research. He said the God particle is the absolute reason why he is 1,000% a time traveler. Homer Simpson got up there like Matt Damon in that movie where they have that Good Will Hunting and draws up this equation for what the God particle is. What is the God particle?
Yeah, it's basically this equation that essentially explains how the universe was created.
And they did that in 1998, and the exact equation happens in 2012. That's unheard of. 14 years ahead of time. They got Homer Simpson up there looking like that goddamn janitor from Harvard, solving equations up on a chalkboard, and 14 years later, it's like, yeah, that's actually how the universe was founded. It's like, wait a fucking minute, little comedy writer with the goddamn yellow cartoon, bro? That's insane. The NSA spying scandal. Everybody knew that the Patriot Act was like in existence, but nobody had a clue that NSA literally knows everything about you. Every dick you've sent has been seen by some government agency, but it wasn't always like that. We didn't know that everything was getting spied on, Sean. Nobody knew that. I didn't know. They predicted that in 2007, 2013 it happened.
No, Lisa, it's not like the government is listening to everybody's conversation.
Smartwatches, 1995, they said it would happen. 2014, they came to fruition. America's Ebola outbreak, 1997, they said it. 2014. Do you remember when Ebola hit? It was like, it was literally...
Hospitals like shutting down.
Oh, they had people wearing like hazmat suits, carrying people around because they were scared Ebola was possible. In the modern world, this was happening. Years and years and years and years ago, Matt Groening said this is going to happen. The FIFA corruption scandal, 2014, they called it. 2015, it came all crashing down. Everybody knew they were getting their pockets greased, making decisions, sending a World Cup to a goddamn desert. Matt Groening said it's going to happen, it happened. Greece's debt default, 2012, they called it. 2015, it happened. So many countries out there, by the way. They picked Greece, the exact country happened. Lady Gaga Super Bowl halftime show, 2012, they called it 2017. I mean, I think we all knew that she was born this way, she would probably get the halftime show at some point, but to the details that they had. These are not coincidences. Coincidenza. I don't know how you pronounce it.
How the f*** do they know this stuff?
He's a time.
Gotta be time travel.
Matt Groening is a time travel. I have so many f***ing questions. Disney's takeover of Fox, 1998. They said in 2017 it happens. The Shard in London, which is a building behind Big Ben, I guess. Is that right?
Apparently, that's what Google search said.
1995, 2009, it comes to fruition. Robot Librarians, 95, they called it. 2016, it happens. The censorship of Michelangelo's David, 1990, 2016, it happened. Three-eyed fish from the f***ing nuclear waste place in Japan. Three-eyed fish comes to fruition in 2001. Matt Groening did it in 1990. 9/11. They called that happening. If you do recall planes going into buildings, they said it in 1997, 2001 it happens. The Syrian uprising, everything that's going on in the Middle East has all been talked about on The Simpsons. And then he created another show called Futurama. And that is huge. He created another show like that. Listen, here's me rubbing it in the face. That's where I could go if I have to. I have so many questions for Matt Groening, and guess what, Matt Groening? The gig's up. We know.
There's a very funny story going on right now about your prediction about the Trump presidency in the Part of the Future episode with your writers. And I was just curious if, being your political party's Democrat, would you take that episode out of syndication if he was elected president, just out of curiosity? Or would you just let it continue to run? I just think it's funny.
Yeah, we'll check that out. That's pretty good. Everything we predict on the show comes true.
Yeah, everything we predict on the show comes true. All right, Matt Groening, let's dig into that a little bit more. What's going on here? Why does he know stuff? What's his background? Why does he know things are going to happen? Is there anything special about him? So here's a little interesting video I came across.
I always talk about how there's truth in movies, comedy, TV shows, and even when it comes to cartoons such as The Simpsons and lies in the news. This is all about Freemasonry, this world of duality. Let's take a listen to this scene here from The Simpsons.
They're all covered with filthy germs, aren't they, Smithies? Why, what do you mean, sir?
Not only this country, but the entire world. People need to understand. It's not a question if someone's a Mason, in Hollywood, the music industry, all these people on the very top of this world, they're all Masons. Everybody underneath that are non-Masons, we just get the crumbs in this world. Take a look at Sylvester Stallone, Matt Groening, the creator of The Simpsons, and John Carpenter of They Live, Halloween, and so many other movies. These are all Freemasons. Once again, so when you look at any directors, writers, or producers in Hollywood, you know they're Masons. It's not a question if. It's only Masons think at the top of this world. Now, all the connections when it comes to Matt Groening, and you see here, they're all doing the Eye of Illumination because they're all part of this exclusive club. You know, better known in the mainstream as the Illuminati, basically Club 33, the highest degree in the Scotch Rite of Freemasonry. Taking a look at all the connections, again, when it comes to Matt Groening, for anybody that doubts he's a Freemason, like everybody else in Hollywood. You have the Simpson family, parking right in front of a 33-cent store. Take a look at the name Simpson. Again, these people, they work on the number systems, not only numbers, colors, dates, signs, and symbols. This is what Masonry is all about. This is their own language of communication. It's not for the masses to understand or comprehend. For those that watch this video and say, conspiracy theorists, this and that, you people don't understand. You have been completely manipulated and mind controlled by those that own and control TV. The right side pentagram. Now, again, hidden symbols in plain sight with the Masonic square and compass. Take a look here again. We're going to get to this more with the skull. All about skull and bones, but let's take a look here. More signs and symbols from the Simpsons, and you get the Masonic, again, square and compass, the all-seeing eye within the pyramid. Again, all about Masonry, right in plain sight. So people that want to deny that Matt Groening is part of this club of Freemasons, of course, if you don't know about the occult, you're going to brush up and you believe, if this was true, the news would tell us so. Again, have no concept and understanding of who those behind the scenes that control it all. They're all Masons working together. As I showed this image earlier, the reference to the skull, it's all about skull and bones. So let's look at this episode of The Simpsons. Again, a reference. Skull and bones of the Yale. Take a listen. And if you don't understand Freemasonry about the occult, you'll not catch what he's saying. Basically, they're all about, again, sign symbols, also these Masonic handshakes. This dog supposedly is doing some type of Masonic handshake in reference to skull and bones. Again, an inside joke, only the occultist will understand it. So you see here George Bush, and you see the skull and bone symbolism. Let's take a look here. I found pretty interesting. Again, when it comes to Mr. Burns, as you see here, I'll get to him in a little bit as far as who this represents. First up, the concept of Mr. Burns. Let's take a look here. And you'll see here, again, 33. And I found this pretty interesting. A reference to breaking through the dome with Homer Simpson. Take a look here.
There's a secret cult. I know we're twisted here in God and evil. No, I want in. I'll break Simpsons tonight.
There you go. It's all about masonry, all about partaking in evil. You see the blindfold. This is all about masonry once again. Taking a look at this Masonic ritual taking place, and you see the blindfold. Again, it's all about masonry. The same entire concept, like I mentioned earlier, truth in movies and lies in the news. Take a listen to what Mel Gibson says here, again, in this movie titled Conspiracy Theory.
Knew what he was saying when he said New World Order. Remember those three little words, New World Order? Well, it was a 33rd degree Freemason, and it's director of the CIA.
George Bush was a 33rd degree Freemason.
All right, so we'll go back to presentation. So just establishing, we got Matt Groening, the creator of The Simpsons, and boy, he's really good at predicting things and they happen. He admits there, he says, yeah, everything we predict in the episode comes true. We connect them and make some connections with his TV show, The Simpsons, and Freemasonry. I don't know, is there something going on in Freemasonry? Do they know some things that we don't? Just real quick, some famous Freemasons. Ben Franklin, Mozart, Twain, Churchill, J. Edgar Hoover, Samuel Adams, Buzz Aldrin, Richard Pryor, Jesse Jackson, John Wayne, Harry Houdini, lots of presidents, including Washington, Roosevelt, James Monroe, Andrew Jackson, James Polk, James Buchanan, Andrew Johnson, James Garfield, William McKinley, William Taft, Warren Harding, Harry Truman, Gerald Ford, I don't know, Donald Trump. So let's look into that. So, Donald Trump, let's talk about his hotel, that famous Fifth Avenue hotel where the riots took place in the last president and in real life. The apartment begins, his Trump apartment begins on the 66th floor, which is 33 to 33rd degree Masons times 2. Could this just be a coincidence? Maybe, until you realize that Trump Tower is only 58 stories high. So Trump's apartment is on the 66th floor, but the tower, the building, is only 58 stories high. He specifically skipped floors 6 through 13 in order to make the numbers match up, so his apartment began on the 66th floor. So he numbered his building in such a way specifically so his apartment would be the 66th floor. Trump Tower is also 664 feet tall, just making sure that that number 66 is in there. Just some articles to back this up. The Boston Globe, the New York Times, Time.com, all talking about his apartment being on the 66th floor of a 58-story tower. Here's Bloomberg.com. Trump says his apartment reaches up to the 68th floor. So it's 3 stories, 66, 67, 68, even though the entire building isn't that high. City records say it's 10 floors shorter. Much of the explanation is a magic trick downstairs where Trump skipped the 6th through 13th floor. Here is the Constitution of Freemasons. This is like the... I don't want to say the Holy Bible, but this is like the main thing, the main book. You become a Freemason, this is what you start with. This is the Constitution of Freemasons. It's the book. Pretty much every lodge would have this. I assume every member would have this. I don't know. I'm not in it, but that's what we're told. The picture is important on the left. What do we see the picture here? We see some columns on the left, some columns on the right, and Apollo, God Apollo there, riding his chariot in between the columns. Oh, what do you know? Trump apartment. Columns on the left, columns on the right, and the god Apollo riding his chariot in between the columns. Just put it side by side in case you didn't catch it. It's there. There's a magazine that talks about some things in Trump apartment. We're going to look at a few different things, but let's talk about Renoir's La Loge, that painting in the background there. La Loge was painted by Renoir when he was 33 years old, and La Loge in French means the lodge. Well, Freemasons meet at lodges. The buildings where Freemasons meet are called lodges. So Trump has this painting called The Lodge, painted by Renoir when he was 33 years old. We'll also notice on the floor we have this interesting checker pattern here on the floor, and what do you know? That is every Freemason lodge everywhere. The floor pattern is always a checkerboard floor in every Freemason lodge, and of course, even at Trump Park Avenue Hotel, the lobby there has a nice checkerboard floor pattern. Now, we know that Donald Trump builds things, and at one point he likes golf courses. He was putting a golf course in Scotland. And there was something with like regional rules or laws. They said you have to prove that you have a Scottish background. So his idea was, I will prove that my family has Scottish background, and I'll prove it with our coat of arms. So Donald Trump has, in present day, makes a Scottish coat of arms symbol. This is it, the Trump International Golf Links. This was the Trump Scottish coat of arms symbol that he came up with. But what we want to point out is at the bottom, the double-headed eagle. The double-headed eagle is a symbol for one thing and one thing only. It is the symbol of Freemasonry. It's in his coat of arms. What were Freemasons historically known for? Historically, Freemasons were builders who carried secret knowledge on buildings. They specialized in math for architecture. This is why Freemasons were coveted by the church during the era of Gothic cathedrals, springing up all over Europe. What career did Donald Trump pursue? What was he known for throughout his life before becoming president? He was a builder. Okay, let's get crazier. So we made the connections. Now we're going to go down the proverbial rabbit hole. I hope you guys are okay joining me here. We're going to get weird. Many UFOs are ETs that are humans visiting us from another timeline. This was said by John Teeter. Again, many UFOs are extraterrestrials that are humans visiting us from another timeline. Dan Burisch in S4. I had never heard of this until I was doing the research for tonight's presentation, but Dr. Dan Burisch. So Dr. Dan Burisch claims to have worked at S4, a secret technology facility located near Area 51. Specifically, Burisch's job was to work alongside an ET. This particular ET race were referred to as J-Rods. According to Burisch, and again, ET, according to Dan Burisch, there's a difference between aliens and extraterrestrials. Aliens are beings that are separate from the human race. ETs, extraterrestrials, are variations of future human races from different timelines. We're not going to play anything by Dan Burisch tonight because it just would take way too much time. If you're interested in this is one of the most fascinating videos I've ever come across. If you want to make a note, you want to take a picture. This is the title of the video on YouTube. You can see down at the bottom, it's 2 hours and 14 minutes long, but this is an entire uncut interview. Dr. Dan Burisch working in S4. S4 is a secret facility next to Area 51. Okay, S4, we'll get into that. But this is an insane interview. He talks all about his entire time in S4 working with an extraterrestrial that is a human being from 40-some thousand years. Different timeline, different variation, but a future human from 40,000 years in advance. Incredible. You should check it out. If you're interested in this stuff, check this out. Blow your mind. But what we are going to look at a little bit here is a video called, that ties in, Reopened, Escape from Area 51, J-Rod, The Inside Story, 2000. Again, this is the full title of this video clip. What this video clip is, we're going to watch a little clip here, is a presentation by a presenter, just like we're here tonight, talking about S4 specifically based on the information given to him by Dr. Dan Burisch. And Tyra, if we could bring that up.
So who is Dr. Dan Burisch? He was the youngest person ever to be elected into the Los Angeles Microscopical Society. And in 1985, he received his bachelor degree in biological sciences, and in 1986, a bachelor degree in psychology. In 1987, Dan explored the feasibility of becoming a priest here at St. Patrick's School of Theology. However, that didn't quite work out, so we actually had to bypass that. Now, in 1989, it was Dr. Edward Teller who arranged for Dan to take classes at the University of New York, Stony Brook, and he earned his PhD there. So I asked this question to all of you. Where have we seen this gentleman before, Dr. Edward Teller? Where have we seen him come up in the stories of these type craft and vehicles before? It was none other than Dr. Teller who arranged for, allegedly, Bob Lazar to get his interview at EG&G at McCarran International Airport, and that's how he got his job at S4. So we have secondary, independent confirmation that Dr. Edward Teller was involved. In 1991, he was employed at Desert Storm as a biowarfare expert. Now, in 1994, he received his Q clearance at S4, and he began working on something called Project Aquarius. And I will draw your attention here to the aircraft sectional chart that anyone can get at any local airport. This is something that's readily available. And if you look up here on the right-hand corner, you've got R-4808N. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the most highly guarded airspace, Dreamland airspace in America. This is the borderline here. You'll notice Groom Lake is right up here, so we can see it does exist. Approximately 12 miles south of Groom Lake, there's something called Papoose Lake, or Area S4. Now, in 1953, according to Dr. Dan Bursch, there was a UFO crash retrieval at Kingman, Arizona. There were 3 bodies recovered. 1 died on impact. He was still contained to his biocontainment device. The other one went to Los Alamos, and the third and final one went to Area 51 S4. That's the J-Rod that Dan Bursch worked with. Now, in 1954, according to Dan Bursch, there was a meeting between President Dwight D. Eisenhower and representatives of the P-52 Orions, and a treaty was signed. A copy of that treaty was kept at Area S4 Level 4-1, and they also gave President Eisenhower something called the Orion Cube, which we'll talk about as well. What is the Orion Cube? It was also known as the Yellow Book. It has nothing to do with phone numbers, okay? What it is it's a 8 by 8 inch square cube, and it's a quantum viewing device that you could, once it's accessed, you could look at the probabilities of future events. There was protocols that had to be followed in order to activate this. And at one time, it's believed that this cube was stored at level 4-1. Later, it was moved to the Scottish Rite Masonic Temple just outside Washington, D.C. From that point further, we don't know where it is. So that's the lineage of the Orion Cube. Now, interesting to note that there are 3 events that took place in 1947. Is there a coincidence? I don't think there is. We've got the Roswell crash on July 2nd, 1947. Then we've got the formation of the CIA in 1947 and the formation of the Independent Air Force also in 1947. 3 events happening at the same time. In 1952, it was the National Security Agency who, according to the CIA, had improper intelligence, so partial majestic control of Project Aquarius was handed over to the, quote, new boys on the block because they came after the Central Intelligence Agency. So there was this animosity that continues today between the Central Intelligence Agency and the National Security Agency. Now, moving down to 4-2, we've got the SolidWorks rendering and also the AutoCAD rendering of 4-2. Moving into the facility, the first thing you'll see when you look and walk into level 4-2 is a 3-foot tall statue of an Alice in Wonderland rabbit. There's a symbolic message that they're giving you here. There's a primary looking glass device, and then on either side of that primary looking glass device, ladies and gentlemen, there are 2 secondary ERBs or Einstein-Rosen bridges. Up on the left, I've got a graphic of what we have termed the galactic positioning codes, because when you access a Stargate at the S4 facility, you don't need to have a galactic positioning code on your arm or flipbook because all that data is inside the control room. But when you go outside S4, you do need to get this positioning code data so that you know where you're going. Here we've got the jump pads at 4-2, and then down here we've got the Project Sidekick storage facility. There's also one just below that. To the right, we've got weapons research and development. I've got a blown-up view of the Looking Glass device here. We're going to consider something called the doctrine of convergent timeline paradox. And then we're also going to consider, how did the US government get the technology to access naturally occurring stargates throughout the world? It has to do with the Sumerian cylinder seals that were recovered in Baghdad years ago. Now, this is a SolidWorks rendering of the Looking Glass device. You'll notice that there's this toroid or donut ring-shaped device. And inside this, we have multiple permanent electromagnets. And this is consistent with 6 electromagnetic fields that form above this device. There is a up and down actuating rotating cylinder, so it's a height adjustable rotating cylinder which is attached to a 3-axis gimbal system. That's the general layout of the Looking Glass device. Now, what does this thing do? Well, it can actually warp the fabric of space-time both forwards and back, and you can actually see the probabilities of future events. That's the primary function. However, there's a secret to the Looking Glass device, which Dan Burrish has told us. What you can do is you can flip this device up at 45-degree angle, and if you tune it to a slightly different frequency, it can be used as a stargate. So it actually has a dual purpose. You've got these spires or guide rings just above the Looking Glass device. These are used to guide the electromagnetic field over the Looking Glass device. It's something that you can hit with your hand. Now, per Dan's comments, there was a 3-foot-tall statue of an Alice in Wonderland rabbit. He had a maroon vest, he had golden fringes, and he had black buttons. He was holding a clock, and this is symbolic that you're going down the rabbit hole into a world that's beyond belief, and that's exactly what happens in the Looking Glass area. So it was a symbolic encrypted message. Now, when we talk about time travel and we talk about the doctrine of convergent timeline paradox, in my assessment, there is no better illustration of this concept than the movie Back to the Future 2. And they talk about this in that movie. So just to illustrate this, for example, on the bottom here, we've got something called the flow of time, representative of the bottom arrow or timeline 1. That's the timeline we're on. So we're moving down this timeline and everything is fine, everything is great, and then somebody decides to flip on one of these Looking Glass devices, and this is called the Looking Glass point of observation. That's right here. Now, we have someone that is looking into the future of probable events. At that point, at that exact point in time, we are no longer, ladies and gentlemen, on timeline 1, but we are now on timeline 2, and we have theoretically we have affected our future timeline 1. So that's how this works.
I'm not shy. I drank too much water. I really I had to use the men's room there. All right, that's why I disappeared, if anybody wants to know. Moving on. You were given a lot here. We're going to make some connections. There's more here than you know. There's important things, but we'll keep moving forward. Whoop. All right, so important words to know as we conclude after watching that. Game theory. The phrase game theory is basically summarized as a mathematical equation used for predicting future outcomes. Bridge, we heard the word bridge. Einstein and Nathan Rosen used the theory of relativity to propose the existence of bridges through space-time, known as the Einstein-Rosen bridge. Keystone. In Freemasonic thinking, the columns, we saw those columns, kind of represent opposing views or different sides to things, kind of like the day and night, the sun and moon, male, female, yin yang. The keystone is what brings everything together. And of course, follow the white rabbit. We saw the white rabbit connection to Alice in Wonderland with the looking glass. We have the looking glass technology at S4 symbolized by the white rabbit from Alice in Wonderland. So, to summarize a little bit before we wrap up, tonight's presentation looked at various circumstances of seeing the future, predicting the future, prophesying about the future, affecting the future, traveling to the future, much of which just kept having many strange coincidences to Donald Trump. It's happening again. On October 28, 2017, 7 months ago, an anonymous individual began posting online, the website 4chan and then 8chan. The individual claimed to be military intelligence with a Q clearance, just like Dr. Dan Burish, for example, that we just heard about, who was sharing information about the world and the deep state as part of a secret military operation. The postings by this individual, or maybe members of a team, continue to this day. The poster uses the signature Q and is known as QAnon or Q Anonymous. Q's claims include working alongside President Donald Trump and has continually offered a series of proofs, time and time and time and time again, that defy coincidence to back up these claims. Some of these claims involve letting Q followers know what will happen before they happen. Why do weird things about seeing the future just keep attaching to Donald Trump? I don't know. Here's a post by Q, January 7th, 2018, on the right here. DEFCON 1, 4/10/20. 4/10/20 is the numeric numbers for DJT, Donald J. Trump. DEFCON 1, DJT, Fire and Fury, non-nuclear. So over on the left here, just some of the words, okay? January 7, 2018, 6 days before the word non-nuclear DEFCON 1, 6 days later, ooh. Y'all remember this? Hawaii panics after alert about incoming missiles sent in error. DEFCON 1 was alerted in Hawaii. Missile threat, alert for Hawaii, false alarm. December 10th, we're going to go backwards. These aren't in order. December 10th, 2017, over on the right. We see some different words. We're going to pick out here blunt and direct time. The letters there, those words BDT, false flag, expect fireworks. The very next day, New York bombing suspect identified a 27-year-old Brooklyn resident from Bangladesh. If you remember this was back on December 11th. There was the potential bombing attack in New York. So on the left here, very next day after Q's post, there was a bombing attempt in New York. Suspect was Bangladesh. Bangladesh, the currency of Bangladesh is BDT. And in the articles, it is described, the bomb failed, described by New York Times as harmless as fireworks. Immediately afterwards, Q posts, do you believe in coincidences? Blunt and direct time, BDT, think currency, think fireworks, thwarted, message delivered, these people are sick, Q. All right, up top here, Monday, November 6, 2017, Q post, nothing is random. At the time, we're looking at military time, 5:07 p.m., nothing is random, everything has meaning plus, plus, plus. 7 minutes later, President Donald Trump posts to Twitter, my visit to Japan in friendship with Prime Minister Abe will yield many benefits for our great country. Massive military and energy orders happening, plus, plus, plus. 7 minutes later, why is there a plus, plus, plus in Donald Trump's tweet? Can anybody explain that? Anybody have what is the explanation? Why is there a plus, plus, plus? Why? What does that have anything to do with that message? But it does come exactly 7 minutes later, after the person saying that he's connected to the president, just post plus, plus, plus. It says nothing is random. This just happened. We're going to wrap up with this. There's a lot more of these, but I think we're wrapping up with this. I don't know. But May 2nd, Q posts these two images of a JetBlue plane. So over on the right, May 2nd, last month, No context behind the pictures. He just posts 2 pictures of a JetBlue plane. I don't know, again, how many of you pay attention to the news. 48 hours ago, June 26th, the exact same flight. That JetBlue plane, there it is on the left, surrounded by tons of police cars at JFK Airport, and armed police, FBI, raid the plane. There's pictures with everybody with their hands in the air. Immediately after the news breaks that same night, again, just a couple hours ago, Q post, coincidence? Review the image location, nothing provided is random. That's the San Francisco to JFK A321 direct flight. This is interesting. June 20th, just a couple days ago, the Trump rally in Minnesota. We see on the picture here, President Trump pointing to a guy in a t-shirt. On the left here, man with Q t-shirt. This man comes to the Trump rally in Minnesota. He's spotted by Trump people working there for Trump. He's given a VIP pass upon arrival. No idea why, but he's given a VIP pass. Is it because of his shirt? And was given a seat right where the President of the United States would clearly see him when he entered the arena stage. Trump enters the arena, stops, turns the guy, points to the guy in the Q t-shirt. Q immediately posts, when it happened, Q posts these pictures. Look for more direct confirmations. It's time, Q. And just to verify, this is the guy. He took a picture of his shirt, posted it on Twitter to show this was the shirt I was wearing. Here's the VIP pass I was given when I arrived. So, this is what we're going to get into next month. It's going to be pretty wild, pretty crazy, but if we're going to conclude this 3-series presentation, why not talk about something that's currently ongoing? So, what are some of the topics in which Q has revealed information? Some of the things that Q has revealed, not necessarily what we will talk about, but what Q has been talking about since October. The construction of the Russia collusion, the Saudi Arabia crackdown, North Korea plans, Iran plans, fake news, blackmailed politicians in Congress, Muslim Brotherhood infiltration of the United States government's secret technology, withholding of medical procedures and cures, anything and everything involving Hillary Clinton, how politicians use organizations like the Red Cross as personal and deep state slush funds, and much, much, so much more. But what's the connections? It's interesting that someone I find it interesting, someone that's talking about events that happen also use the words top left, Keystone, bottom left, bridge, top right, game theory, bottom right, Alice in Wonderland. So, join us next month, Thursday, July 26th, for the coming storm, Deep State Revelations according to Q, in which we will try to go through the beginning of the Q phenomenon. We'll go back to October, the beginning, the early foundation of knowledge revealed, the exhaustive series of proofs. We just went through a handful of proofs, just a handful. At this time, there's, I think, over 80 examples, and these aren't even the most concrete ones, okay? I told you it was exhaustive, proof after proof after proof after proof. At some point, we're going to exhaust it. At some point, let's see, at what point do you guys say, okay, enough coincidences? The truth, according to Q, the truth behind every major news story since November, including China, tariffs, North Korea, Iran, the attacks, Hawaii, collusion, etc. So Q has something to say about every single one of these things in the news. Why members of Congress are resigning or not running for re-election at an unprecedented pace. Look it up if you don't believe me. Secret societies, the importance of Julian Assange, who's remarkably in the news again this week for a lot of reasons, and most importantly, what is being done about all of this. So that wraps up tonight's presentation.